Tonight we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. This weekend represents the 10-year anniversary of the 9/11 event, and there will be an unveiling of a new building called the One World Trade Center, more simply known as One World Trade Center and formerly known as the Freedom Tower. It is the leading building of the new World Trade Complex in Lower Manhattan in New York City, the site of Ground Zero, where the event took place 10 years ago. And I just want to start off by saying that, we're going to be talking about the symbolism of the building. I have a special guest joining me tonight who's a specialist in that. And before we do that, I just want to make sure that, I say this and I make this very clear that, the things that we're going to be discussing tonight are in no way meant to disrespect the people that were killed in that tragedy or the people or families who were affected by losing the loved ones. I'm very sensitive to the fact that this is a tough topic for a lot of people to take on, but my prayers go out to those people. They always have. I have the utmost respect for the people who had to suffer through that. But we're going to be talking about an interesting topic tonight. Mark Gray joins me tonight. He is an investigative symbologist and the chiropractor. He has a degree in nutrition, chemistry, and chiropractic medicine. He has studied symbolism for over 20 years, and he specializes in the sacred architecture of Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City. And he also co-authored the book Freedom's Gate, The Lost Symbols in the U.S. Capitol with William Henry. He's going to be here tonight. We're going to be talking about it. We've written up something on my blog. You can check that out as we're going through tonight. And hopefully you guys will call in with your comments and listen to the information that we're going to be talking about. It's pretty fantastic. I have to say, Mark was posting up a lot of really great pictures on his Facebook page, and I happened to notice them. And I was reading some of the connections, and there was some great correspondence between people on his page. And so I copied some of that and put it onto my blog so that people could read it. I also sent it out through my newsletter. And the feedback has been pretty fantastic. People are really paying attention to this, and I think that's a real affirmation of the amount of people who are waking up to the realities of some of this hidden and occult meeting and some of this not so hidden meeting that's really just kind of put there in plain sight. Once you start to really assemble the meanings and what's going on, and you understand some of the background to this stuff, it's very clear to be able to see some of the things going on when things like this are coordinated and built. So, without further ado, welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Hillary. Thanks so much.
Where do you want to start?
I think we should start with, what the World Trade Center site was. I believe that the 9/11 memorial is rooted in a much older place, and that the World Trade Center site itself was actually a temple. And to think about that, you got to remember that temples, they use sacred architecture to unite heaven and earth, or God and man. A temple is a bridge between heaven and earth, and a temple mimics the stars. So when you walk into a temple, you're actually walking into heaven, and God and man can meet in that temple. Also, a temple uses symbols and sacred architecture to mimic the process of enlightenment, these processes that are going on inside of us. So the goal of the temple is to unite heaven and earth. And in the temple, one thing's important. In the temple, you're going to meet God. So the question really is the original World Trade Center site before 9/11, was it a temple? And if you picture the two twin towers standing there, these two giant towers or pillars, you got to remember that that World Trade Center with those two towers were actually a symbolic representation of our consciousness. It was a consciousness that divided the world into polarities: right and wrong, fast and slow, good and bad, Muslim and Jew, rich and poor, healthy and sick. So the twin towers represented the idea of two opposing forces, male and female, positive and negative. The Freemasons called these opposing forces Jachin and Boaz, and they represented them as two pillars. They copied this idea from the ancient Egyptian temples, where two obelisks or pillars would stand at the entrance and guard both sides of the temple entrance. These pillars also stood at the entrance to Solomon's temple. So the thing is that these pillars are used as tools for transformation. They cause human consciousness to become more like Christ consciousness. So the purpose of the twin pillars at the entrance to temples was to drive consciousness to the center of the individual. So then you have no more polarities, and only then can you walk through the temple gate. Even Jesus said, when the two become one, then you will be in the kingdom of heaven. Now, the original World Trade Center site, those two twin towers were symbolic of the two polarities inside the human mind that we know as the right and left hemispheres of the brain. What most people don't know is that the base of the towers was a gold sphere. That gold sphere that was between the two towers symbolized the human pineal gland that is at the center of our brain. And the pineal gland is also known as the third eye, is the gateway to other worlds. That gold sphere that was between the twin towers, it stood there and it was composed of 52 plates. That's the same number as weeks in a year, and it spun once every 24 hours. So it was a symbol of time, but time as we used to know it before 9/11, when we were spinning between two polarities. But here's the important part. The architect of the original World Trade Center site said that he designed the World Trade Center site after the Kaaba in Mecca. Now, the Kaaba is the most holy spot in Islam, and Kaaba means cube. And the Kaaba, they believe, is the center of the world, and that there is a gateway to heaven directly above the Kaaba. Now, the Kaaba, which means cube, and it's a black cube, it's the cube that Muslims must make a pilgrimage to once in their life and walk around 7 times. Now, the cube, that Kaaba, that cube, is actually aligned to the stars. It aligns to the constellation Argo, which was the name of the ship in the myth of Jason and the Argonauts. Jason, he was in search of the Golden Fleece. The Golden Fleece represented an idea, a very symbolic idea. It represented royal power, the land of gold and green. It represented God's forgiveness, or the hero. And more importantly, it represented the Son of God. So the World Trade Center was modeled after the Kaaba and Mecca, the most holiest site in Islam. Then we can say for sure that the same thing is true about the World Trade Center, that it too is modeled after the search for the Golden Fleece, a.k.a. God's Son.
You know, when I listened to you, yeah, it is very interesting. In fact, when I first started conversating with you about this, what really caught me was the symbolism, the octagon, the number 8. You had pulled in the prism, just in the very design of the building itself. When you start to look at how this has been designed and all of the very, very intricate details and how that and why that matters, I think we should start there, because what you just gave us was kind of an overload of information. I can just hear people going, what? Even though it's fantastic and it's great and it's true. I know you've been working on this for a long time. What are we looking at basically with the design of the building that's taking place now? And you just described the 2. And what I find interesting too is the number 11. The buildings represented 11. There was a lot of symbolism that was found in media, in print, in movies. Even in The Matrix, there was a scene. I don't know if you know this, Mark, but there was a scene where his ID, the main character, Neo, he had an ID. And on the ID, now this film, I think, came out in the early 2000s. Now, the date on there was September 11th. I think it came out in the 90s, actually. It had the date September 11th, 2001 on it. And there was no reason for that date to be there. So we have a lot of things that are tied into this whole scenario, this whole 9/11 scenario. And what I'm really curious about, and maybe you can enlighten us with this, is why they're picking the 10-year anniversary to celebrate and unveil and do all of this historic grind, if you will, of bringing this all out into people's consciousness. Why are we doing it now?
Well, this is the prelude to what's going to come next year. The memorial is opening this Sunday, but then next year, on 9/11 of 12, the rest of the site, which will be a museum, will open up, and that'll be 3 months before the December 21st, 2012 event, when we have a galactic alignment that the Mayans talked about. It's the end of the Mayan long count. And the idea is that something's important is about to happen, and it has to do with an idea of time. And you know what? let me tell you something. You were talking about something really important, is that there was these bizarre coincidences that occurred before the 9/11 and after the 9/11 event that don't make any sense. Like you said in the movie The Matrix, that Neo, his passport, actually had September 11th, 2001 as the expiration date on his passport, but the movie came out before the 9/11 event. How does that happen? Like, for example, like the Quran. If you go to the Quran and look at chapter 9, verse 11, 9/11, it says, "For it is written that a son of Arabia would awaken a fearsome eagle," hence the United States. "The wrath of the eagle would be felt throughout the lands of Allah. And lo, while some of the people trembled in despair, still more rejoiced, for the wrath of the eagle cleansed the lands of Allah, and there was peace." How is the Quran, verse 9/11, come up with something like that? So there's bizarre coincidences. You talk about the idea of the 11 letters showing up. So like New York City is 11 letters. George W. Bush is 11 letters. The Twin Towers looks like an 11. New York was the 11th state admitted to the Union. When you have an emergency, you dial 911. So all of these are clues that something bigger and crazier is going on. One of those things is that the date April 20th in 2008, Pope Benedict comes all the way from Rome to ground zero, goes down into the pit of one of the towers, and stands on a black cube. This is really important. If you want to understand the World Trade Center site, you've got to know about the black cube, because the Pope stands on the black cube and blesses ground zero on April 20th. Now, the strange thing is that the Catholic Church celebrates a feast on April 20th called the Feast of Theotemos. Theotemos means the god of time. See, here's this idea of time. So the god of time is Kronos, or Saturn. So the planet Saturn was always represented as a black cube, and this black cube has to do with time. So the Pope shows up on April 20th. The feast day of the god of time is on April 20th. His symbol is the black cube. They erect a black cube altar in the pit of one of the World Trade Center sites. The Pope stands there, blesses the ground. And you know what else is strange? April 20th is the 110th day of the year. Do you know how many stories were in the World Trade Centers? 110. The odds that April 20th is the 110th day of the year, and that's how many stories are in the World Trade Center, and the Pope comes there and blesses the ground on a black cube on the day that they worship the god Saturn, who is represented as a black cube, the god of time, is absolutely impossible to think about. And what happens is this idea manifests itself on the same spot that the Pope gives the blessing on the black cube. The new memorial, on that spot, they build another black cube. And that black cube in the memorial is actually called Reflecting Absence. It's designed in the basements of World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2. There are two black cubes with black cubes inside of them, and they're engulfed with flowing waterfalls. And when you see a cube inside of a cube, right away you think, hey, that's a hypercube. That's a symbol of fourth-dimensional time and space. Or, more importantly, the cube is the symbol of the god Saturn. And Saturn, more importantly, was always known as the gateway to the gods. Saturn was known as the dweller on the threshold, or the father of time. Saturn, here's a big one, Saturn, the black cube, was the god that established the Roman Golden Age. The Roman Golden Age was a time when heaven and earth united in a time of peace. So the Pope comes over, he asks for blessings, he asks for peace on the black cube. They build a memorial that's called Reflecting Absence that is another black cube, and the planet Saturn is actually the god. The planet Saturn is actually the god that ushers in the Golden Age. And like I said, remember, the builder of the World Trade Center site originally said that the World Trade Center site is modeled after the Kaaba, the holiest spot in Islam, and that spot has a black cube in its center. And the people of Islam go there and march around that black cube 7 times. So the fact that all of a sudden we have black cubes showing up at the 9/11 memorial is absolutely amazing. That's important because it's going to come back to what you were saying about Freedom Tower or the One World Trade Center. What they did was when the two buildings collapsed and they rebuilt the One World Trade Center, they combined the two buildings so that its shape is a square at the base and another square at the top, which is offset by 45 degrees. So if you look at the new building, the Freedom Tower from above, it would look like an 8-pointed star with an octagon in the middle. Now, an 8-pointed star, the new tower is an 8-pointed star. In symbology, we know that 8 is the number of regeneration, renewal, rebirth, and transition. The number 8. And One World Trade Center is going to be 1,776 feet tall. Now, that's the year the Declaration of Independence was signed. But it's a hidden meaning because if you look at the number 1776, actually it's two numbers, 888 plus 888. Those two numbers equal 1776. And the number 888 is the numeric value of Jesus in Greek gematria. So 888 is the number of the Christ, just like 666 is the number of man. It is bizarre to think that the new tower contains within it the numbers 888 and 888, and they're separated by a polygon in the middle. Now, the new tower is 104 stories tall. If you divide 104 stories by the polygon of 8 that's in the middle, you get 52, because 52 plus 52 is 104. 52 is the number of weeks in a year. So the bottom half of the Trade Center represents 1 year. The top represents a second year, 104 stories, 52 and 52, divided by a polygon. So the bizarre thing is, and it just keeps getting more bizarre, and by bizarre I mean not necessarily not good or not necessarily good, it's just strange to the mind that this is going on, that other 8-pointed stars around the world exist. One is the seal of the prophets. One is the wheel of Dharma in Buddhism. One is the star of Lakshmi. These stars exist, and they all talk about uniting heaven and earth. So why does the New World Trade Center have these dimensions? Another thing is in the architectural world, they talk about the building as being under the design of something called a square antiprism. It's kind of like if you took two pyramids, one pyramid facing up and one pyramid facing down, and you squished them together and then turned them 45 degrees so that the two pyramids merged. Well, the interesting thing is that kind of architecture is called a square antiprism. So you got to ask yourself, what's a prism? Well, a prism breaks apart white light into many colors. So what do you think an antiprism does? Well, an antiprism takes all of the colors and joins them back into one. That's why it's called the One World Trade Center. Also, it's interesting to think that e pluribus unum means out of many one, and that's the phrase that's on the seal of the United States of America. We're getting ready to usher in a new age.
All of this symbolism sounds really positive. You know, when we talk about it, when I look at your pictures, by the way, people can go to my blog. I have posted most of Mark's pictures on it, hillaryraimo.blogspot.com. You can go to my website, hillaryraimo.com, and find it there as well. So if you'd like to follow along with us, some of these pictures, these graphics that he's talking about are posted on there, along with some of the explanations. You know, when I read through this and when I look at the pictures, it sounds very positive, although, you know, nothing that's ever really been done by most of those people in power has ever really been positive and, you know, a good thing for humanity. What do you think we're really looking at here? Are we looking at some kind of hopeful monument to the bringing in of this positive energy, kind of replacing the negative energy, or are we looking at something else?
Well, my website is Cosmic Doorways, and at the opening of Cosmic Doorways, I talk about something called tools for transformation. What is a tool for transformation? It's something that can transform you. It's a tool. They're all around you. Music is a tool for transformation. Architecture, art, all of these things. The landscape of cities and the way that the streets are laid out, the numbers that are in buildings, all of these things are tools for transformation. Here's the thing about a tool. A tool can be used for good or evil. I can take a butter knife and I could spread butter on bread and feed the poor. I could take the same knife that night and stab somebody in the back. It's just a knife. It's a tool. So when we go back to the World Trade Center site, it's a tool for transformation, which means that who's using it and what are they using it for? Now, there may be entities out there that are using this site for some kind of nefarious means that I know nothing about. I don't really care. You know why I don't care? Because what matters is how I view it. It matters how I talk about it. It matters what I post about it and what I look into the symbols. I mean, I can have a Christian cross, and for some people, it's the most holiest relic they've ever seen. Other people, it's a sign of Satan and the Crusades are coming to kill him. What if I spun the cross upside down? All of a sudden, I got Satanists on my hands. So a cross, what does it mean? Well, it depends on who you're asking. Depends on how they're using it. For me, I look at the World Trade Center site as something really amazing. It's a spot where heaven and earth unite. It's a gateway. It's a portal to other dimensions, if you allow it to be. If you look at the numbers, if you look at the architecture, if you look at what went on there, if you look at how in the end I believe the World Trade Center site is going to unite the Muslim, the Jew, the Christian, the rich, the poor. Why? Because they're telling us that's what is happening. 9/11 is a result not of a couple people. 9/11, the event, is a result of every single person that's ever lived. It's the result of 6,000 years of history. We all caused 9/11 to happen. Now, people will go, oh, that's ridiculous. No, it's not. We're all joined like a giant beehive. It's all of us, the people who are ignorant about listening to, different alerts about what was going to happen, to the people who tried to respond, to the people that did something, nothing, anything. We're all responsible, all the way back to Adolf Hitler, all the way back to Genghis Khan, all the way back to the person who was milking their cow in the 1600s. Every single person created history, so all of us are responsible for 9/11. But the thing is that what happened at 9/11? Two towers that represented a polarity, a division in consciousness, came down, and in its place, one tower had arisen out of that, a unity, a world unity. Now, people get real upset if you start talking about the one world order. Oh no. Yeah, okay, oh no. It depends on how you use it. It depends on how you think about it. I have no problem with one world peace. We all go, oh, we want one world of peace where we have one passport, where we all can go from country to country, where there's no more guns. Yeah, it's called a one world. Now, if people get control of that are evil, then maybe we don't want that. But what if people get control of the one world order that are in good standing, in a good mind frame, in a good consciousness? So the more people start to look at the World Trade Center site as a positive thing, some people look at it with fear, some people look at it with grieving, and they should, absolutely should. But out of the grieving, out of the fear, out of the ashes rises the phoenix. So yeah, it combusted, yeah, it blew up, yeah, there's dust, yes, people died, God bless them. But out of that, something new and amazing is coming out of it. The world's united, the world's paying attention. People are thinking about it. My goodness, even the numbers 911 is important. I always see 9/1111. So I'm like, wait a minute, that's a mathematical thing. That's 9 divided by 11. So I pull out a calculator. I go 9 divided by 11, and up comes the number 81818181. And repeat the digits. And I'm like, 81, 8 is infinity, and 1 is the 1. So 818181 is the infinite one, the infinite one, the infinite one, the infinite one. I had goosebumps on my arm when I typed it in. I almost fell off the chair. I'm like, the infinite one. And then also I realized that 9/11 is actually a mirror image of an ancient symbol. The symbol's called the Chi Rho. It's the symbol of the Christ. It's the symbol that Constantine the Great saw that made him change the whole Roman Empire to Christianity. Now, I'm not saying that Christianity's better, Buddhism's better. I'm all world religions. I like them all. They all point to God. Listen to them all. So, but the thing is that 9/11, if you mirror image it, it's Chi Rho. And Chi Rho are the letters of the Christ. It's very interesting, and in fact, if you source back the letter Chi, it means fish, and if you source back the letter Rho, it means head. So Chi Rho means fish's head. That's the Christ. Who's the head fisherman? Christ, 9/11. So this idea of the infinite one, the 9/11 event, is tied in so deep with so much numerology, so much symbolism. It definitely is a mass consciousness event. It's the universe talking to us, and it's us talking back to the universe. And in fact, that's really important because I said every temple has to be joined to the star. It doesn't have to be, but the greatest temples are joined to the stars. They mimic the stars. And the thing is that the World Trade Center site does just that. It mimics the stars. The two holes where World Trade Center 1 was and World Trade Center 2 and the New Freedom Tower, if you look at them, they look just like something really important, like the 3 Giza pyramids. But the thing is, they don't match quite right. They don't look quite right. So what I did was I spun the picture around and created a mirror image. It fits. So when you flip the picture of the 9/11 site, all of a sudden what you're looking at is the 3 Giza pyramids. Well, the thing is that the 3 Giza pyramids, they're aligned to the belt stars of the constellation of Orion. Now, the 3 belt stars in the constellation of Orion was what the Egyptians called the Duat. It was where the god Osiris lived. It was where all the other gods and the supernatural beings went. In fact, in Egypt, in the burial chambers, they formed actual touching points from the earth to the Duat, and spirits could use tombs to travel back and forth to the Duat. But the thing is that for the Egyptians, the pyramids were their temples. But they weren't burial chambers. They were spots where the dead or the living could go from earth up into the heavens. Why would the World Trade Center site mimic such a spot unless somebody or something or some phenomenon or the universe or nature or a collective consciousness created this type of an alignment? It's absolutely incredible to look at. I have pictures of that. I think you have them on a post that you made.
Yeah, I have them on a Facebook post, but for those who aren't on my Facebook page, you can go to my blog. I want to go back to the fish head for a second. The fish head I find very interesting because I didn't catch that in some of your writings. I haven't been able to keep up. You just go and go and go and go. Fish were originally worshipped as a symbol of Nimrod, the sun god who, after being killed in myth, was reborn in his wife Saramisius' womb, and her womb was represented as the waters of the great deep. And Nimrod then became the fish god, being reborn in those waters, and he was a Babylonian fish god, and I think it was Onus was the Babylonian fish god who was the return of Nimrod from the world of the dead, and he's depicted as half fish with a fish head worn over his own. And what I find very interesting too is that one of the names of the gods in Babylon was Philistia. I think I'm saying that right. Was Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. Dag meant fish, On meant sun. So I think there's a really important tie that goes even further back from Christ, back to the Babylonian culture. And if you research the symbolism, which I'm sure you have, that is a pretty heavy-duty thing. And if you look at the hat that the Pope wears, it symbolizes a fish head.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And the whole thing where you take 9/11 and its mirror image is the Chi Rho. And again, Chi is the letter X. But the letter X, if you go back, like you said, go way, way back to the earliest forms of writing, the earliest forms of writing were pictograms, actual pictures. They weren't even letters yet. So if you look at our modern letter X, it sources itself out to a line with a bunch of lines across it. It looks like a multiple X's. But what it was the bones of a fish. So our letter X actually was the bones of a fish in pictograms. Same with our letter R, which is the rho. So rho is actually the letter R, okay? So the letter R originally was just a circle with a line on it. Well, the circle with a line on it, this rho, which is our modern R, in pictogram form was a head with a neck. So what you get is Chi Rho, okay, is actually ends up being the fish bones with the head on top. So when you see this symbol that Constantine saw, that they say are the first 2 letters of Christ, it's actually Chi Rho. But if you look at 9/11, it's a circle with a line, that's the 9, with an X under it. That's the 2 pillars fallen over, the 2 twin towers. So it's 911, or Chi-Rho. It fits perfect. It's absolutely insane. It's impossible to try to understand how that even works. It just does. So, but the thing is I find interesting is that symbol showed up to Constantine. He ends up changing the whole Roman Empire away from paganism, which I don't necessarily have any problem with paganism, and the gods are great myths, but he changes the Roman Empire and makes Christianity the state-run religion. Now, here it is all these years later, thousands of years later, the same symbol shows up numerologically. It makes sense because of our technological age that this symbol now shows up to everybody. 911, 911, 911, Chi-Rho, 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 the Christ, the Christ, the Christ. But what is the Christ? The Christ is a consciousness. The Christ consciousness. You got the man Jesus who was a carpenter. Next thing you know, he has an epiphany. He's out in the desert. He's tempted. He comes back. He's no longer Jesus. Is that the same Jesus that grew up down the street? No, this guy's somebody totally different. Jeez, man, who is he? He's the Christ, the Christos. So that's what's happening. This sign has showed up again because I believe that the old world of duality of World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2 came tumbling down and crashing down, and unfortunately people died in that event. God bless them. I mean, really. But out of the ashes, the phoenix rises up, this new amazing building, and the alignment there aligns us to the stars. So for sure, without a doubt, we got ourselves a temple complex. And if you don't believe it, start looking at the streets that are around the World Trade Center complex. For example, on the one side of the street, you've got West Street. Well, West is the land of the dead in Egypt mythology. On the other side, you got Greenwich Street. Greenwich. Well, if you go back to Egypt, there was a green god of resurrection. His name was Osiris, the god of the Duat. We know Osiris in our modern terms as Orion. So the belt stars of Orion, which the Egyptians called the Duat, is the same exact alignment as World Trade Center 1, 2, and the new Freedom Tower. And the street that runs through there is actually named Greenwich, which is the god of resurrection, the green god Osiris of Egypt. It just doesn't even make sense that it's possible that that could happen. But more than that, I mean, look, my friend Chad Stumke, who is an investigator himself, chimed in on one of the posts, and he said, yo, I just watched Discovery Channel last night. You're going to love this. There's a building there that's the new transportation hall, right? It's called Path Hall or Transportation Hub. It looks like something you don't even know what it is, these rays of white beams glowing out all over. I looked at it a bunch of times, couldn't figure out what to make of it, couldn't figure out what it was. Out of the blue, here comes Chad. He's like, yo, I just watched the Discovery Channel. You're going to love what they're saying about this place. First off, it's designed as a dove. I'm like, oh, it's a dove. Okay. It's like these wings of the dove flying up in the air. I see it. And then he puts all these quotes that the builders of this dove say about it. Here's some of the quotes. They say, this is Ground Zero's new gateway. Another quote said, beneath the new skyscrapers, an iconic new gateway is filling the void. And then here's what the project architect says. He said, I just look forward to a time when that space opens to the heavens, and I can see the angels coming to collect the souls. What? They're talking about? They're calling this place a gateway. I mean, I grew up watching like the movie Stargate. Stargate is an ability to go from one place to another place by bleeping through time and space. They're calling Ground Zero, and they're calling some of the buildings gateways where angels are going to come down and grab the souls and carry them up to heaven.
Yep,
like,
that makes sense.
Blows me away.
That makes sense. Yeah, well, you know, Saramisius is also, she was a goddess of Babylon, and she was also depicted as the dove, which I think is very interesting. I don't know if you want to go into this right now because you're on such a roll, but I also wanted to bring up the fact that Neptune or Poseidon, who was part man, part fish, and some of the stories was ruler of the underworld or the sea, and the trident is an extremely important symbol that you've been also talking about, and I think it's really important to mention those two sculptures that actually are right in front of the entrance down into the museum part. I believe that's where it is, but what do you think?
And actually, that started the whole roll on looking at the 9/11 memorial. It wasn't the first time I looked at 9/11. Way back when this whole event happened, 9/11, I looked at it then. I've been reading, about it. Kind of lost track of it. And then we had that earthquake on August 23rd. That really shook me up, right?
Yeah.
I know you had a moment. I had a moment where I had to reflect. It wasn't about the building shaking and all the house. It wasn't about all that. It actually shook me. It did something to me where, I don't know, the reverberations made me like contemplate and go deeper. And in there somewhere around, I think it was August 29th, literally a voice said, and I don't hear voices, I really don't. Sometimes I do, but I really don't hear voices. But I heard a voice. And the voice said, 9/11 Memorial, take a look at it. So I just reached over to Google, and typed in World 9/11 Memorial. I just typed it in, and a picture comes up of these tridents. And I'm like, whoa, look at them. And they had erected these tridents at the entrance to the new 9/11 museum. And I'm like, tridents? Wow. And then basically a trident, T-R-I, tri means three. It looks like a pitchfork with three prongs. And there's two of them, mirror imaging each other. Everything's mirrored. Everything's like a, reflecting absence. It's 9/11 reflects the Cairo. They're mirror images of each other. The blueprint of the buildings is mirroring the stars. There's mirroring going on all over the place. So if you want to find out what's going on in there, just flip everything. It's like a flip-flop mirror image of something, heaven and earth uniting. It's very strange. But here's these two tridents, two of them side by side. And I'm like, whoa, that symbol, that's like three in the one. That's the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, all separate yet one. Reminds me of the energy centers in the human body, positive and negative and neutral. Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna running right up through the center of the piece. I'm like, whoa, man, they make me feel good. Like those tridents are powerful. I look it up. I said, I got to research this a little bit. And I'm reading that not only does Neptune or Poseidon carry this, but you also got all kinds of characters like the god Hades, Pluto, they all carried this trident. But more importantly, the Hindu god Shiva carries the trident. And I read about what Shiva does with the trident. What does it mean? Here's what Shiva does. Shiva uses the trident to destroy the three worlds, the physical world, the world of the forefathers, and the world of the mind. So the three worlds are supposed to be destroyed by Shiva and formed into a single non-dual plane of existence, also called nirvana. So the trident represents the ability of Shiva to convert all of our consciousness into a state of nirvana. Very powerful symbol. Now, another researcher, Gerald Santana, he chimes in when I post that, and he goes, yo, you're not going to believe what I found. Check out what the trident is. And it says, the trident symbolizes the final and conclusive reality in which all polarities exist at the same time, but without being distinctly discernible from one another. Also, the trident, anatomically, talking about your human body, the trident rules such bodily functions as the pineal gland, which is your third eye, and those parts of the nervous system that are sensitive to psychic impulses, and is related to the aura. So when you enter the museum and you see these two tridents, you darn well better think about Shiva. You better think about nirvana. You better think about the final and conclusive reality in which all polarities exist at the same time, but they aren't distinctly discernible from each other. And you better think about your aura, and you better think about your third eye, because the three become one, and they stand right at the entrance to the museum, which goes down a flight of escalators into the underworld, because the museum is underground. So the trident, don't forget, now I'm not trying to be evil here, I'm just kind of laughing. You know who else holds the trident? Satan. Satan holds the trident. And where does he live? In the underworld. Same with the god Hades, same with the god Pluto. All these gods all live underground. But what's going on down there? You know what's going on down under the ground past the three tridents? And by the way, as you test the two tridents, you have a trident with three prongs and a trident with three prongs. It looks like the number 33. So when you're passing them, you're like, 33. You can't help it. Two tridents, 33. Well, 33 is the number of degrees in the accepted rites of Freemasonry, Scottish Rite Freemasonry. 33 was the age of Christ when he rose from the dead. 33 is the age of Muslims, that they believe we exist in heaven eternally. 33, that's the number of vertebrae in the human spine. So 33 represents the stairway to heaven. 33 represents the ability to transform yourself from one state into something else. And 33 is represented by 2 tridents at the entrance to the new museum as you go underground. And guess what you find when you go down there? You go down underground, and there you're going to find something called the last column. The last column was actually the last column that was pulled down from the 9/11 event. After they cleaned all the rubble up, there was one column left. They pulled it down. Now they've resurrected it and put it down in the museum in the underground. So the interesting thing is that this pillar is 36 feet tall. It's like, well, so what? It's 36 feet tall. Yeah, but in symbology, you got to convert and look around for the numbers. So 36 feet times 12 inches, 36 feet is 432 inches. You're like, okay, so the column's 432 inches. So what? Yeah, but what's the number 432? It's really important because 432 is the amount of hertz. 432 hertz is the frequency of the first cry of the average baby when it comes out of the womb. 432 is the natural, 432 hertz is the natural ketone sound of the universe. And here's one for you, it's hilarious, that in the movie Contact, when Jodie Foster is breaking down the codes, 432 was the code that was used to create the Stargate that she traveled through to go into other dimensions. Absolutely nuts. Now, the crazy thing is like, okay, they erected a pillar down there, but do you know that, remember we were talking about the World Trade Center site is designed after the Kaaba? When Muslims go to the Kaaba, one of the things they have to do is not only go 7 times around the black cube, but then they walk out into the wilderness a little bit, and there's 3 columns out there. And those 3 columns, they throw stones at those columns. They throw 21 stones at the columns. They believe that the columns are the devil. Now, they're trying to chase the devil away, and eventually, here's these columns. They represent the devil, and we're putting columns up down there. Now, I don't think the column represents the devil. I'm just interested in the fact that what some people think is a column and what it represents and what it means to different people. Now, in front of that column is something really wild. Because here's the thing. In the museum, down below where this column is, that's called the West Chamber. Remember when we talked about what West was? It's the land of the dead. And it's this massive scale, soaring height room. And there's this huge wall there, like a 30-some foot or more wall. It's called the Slurry Wall. It's the last surviving retaining wall of the original World Trade Center. Now, that should sound familiar because it looks like and will act like what's called the Wailing Wall. Now, the Wailing Wall is a site for Jewish prayer and pilgrimage for centuries. What is the Wailing Wall? It's a remnant of the ancient wall that surrounded Solomon's temple and is one of the most sacred sites in Judaism. So when the Romans tore down Solomon's temple, one wall, the West Wall, was left, and the Jews still go there because it's the closest wall that's the closest to what's called the Holy of Holies, where the Shekinah lived, where God's presence lived. Well, here at the World Trade Center site, what are the odds? They gut the whole place, clean it all out. They're going to make a memorial, but no, they leave one wall, this giant wall called the Slurry Wall, where people are going to be able to go up to. They're going to be able to touch the wall. They're going to be able to pray in front of the wall. They're going to be able to think in front of the wall. Man, if that wall could talk back, that wall is just like the Wailing Wall, or what's called the Western Wall. Now, the weird thing is when you look at the World Trade Center site, the piece of the Slurry Wall that they left in the museum, where do you think it is? Of course, it's on the west side, just like at Jerusalem, at Solomon's temple. That's why it's called the Western Wall. It's very strange. Now, the Arabs, in the Arabic world, you know what they call the Wailing Wall? They call it the Barak Wall. The Barak Wall, after the horse that rode Muhammad up into heaven. But the weird thing is that the Barak Wall, guess what? This Sunday on 9/11/11, guess who's going to go to that wall? Guess who's going to go to that site? Barack Obama, of course. Now, it's just like a play on words. It's a play on history, but it doesn't make sense that the Barak Wall, that the opening of this whole thing is going to be attended by the most important person in America, the president, and his name is Barack. It's very, very strange. It all just starts to make a person go, Should I go on?
Right? Yes, because you know what? We have somebody on the phones who is calling in from Los Angeles, California, and he has commentary about his experience on 9/11. He was actually there. I'm going to take his call and bring him on the air so he can share. But Mark, before I do that, I really just... Are you going to write a book about this and put this all in one place, or am I going to have to chase you on Facebook and make your notes for you?
It at least deserves a YouTube video. And can I just say one more thing about the site? That there's this weekend, what you're going to see is something really beautiful. It's called the Tribute and Light, and they're gonna fire up these lights. We've all probably seen them, right? But these lights are going to beam up into the heavens, and they look like the Twin Towers converted into lights. Beautiful, right? Great memorial. It's going to go up into the heaven, the tribute and light. But here's the thing, that each column is made out of 88 lights. And it's like these 88 lights, and these 88 lights are shining up into the heavens. What does it mean? Well, you know what's weird? In the heavens, the International Astronomical Union, all these astronomers all agree that the number of constellations in the night sky is 88. So why do they make the columns of light going from Earth up into heaven the same as the number of constellations in the sky if not to connect heaven and Earth? For surely it does. And the bizarre thing, here's the bizarre thing, is that the people that play piano will know this, that the number of keys on a piano is 88. So the one column of light is 88, and the other column of light is 88. We basically got dueling pianos going on. And on the 88 keys of a piano, there's 52 white and 36 black keys. Well, if you take the 52 whites from World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2, that adds up to 104, which is the number of floors in the new One World Trade Center. So they're all connected. It's super important. Now, I just want to make one honorable mention here to my good friend Scott Onstadt, who is an investigative symbologist himself. And he's an architect, and he did something incredible and shot this over to me on my wall. He did something that's, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's super simple, but nobody did it, so it's really complicated. That's how these things work. Like, once you see it, it's simple. But doing it, that's tough. And here's what he did that was really tough. He added the heights of all the buildings that are going to be built in the new World Trade Center complex. Building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is no number 6 and number 7. He added those buildings up, and the heights of the buildings comes out to 6,660 feet. What that means, I don't know, except for it's the number of man, 666. But it's a strange place because 9/11, the memorial, is in the borough called Manhattan. Manhattan. Man is, of course, us. Aton is the Egyptian sun god. Manhattan is the joining of heaven and earth, the joining of man and God. It's finally here. And the 9/11 memorial Manhattan is located in the tri-state area, in an area called Trinity, next to Tribeca, and they're putting the new tridents there right next to the tri-star arrangement of the World Trade Center 1, 2, and the new One World Trade Center. Bizarrely enough, if you go in the new World Trade Center, One World Trade Center, when it's built, there's 104 floors. I kept looking at that, and then I realized something bizarre. Other sites said there was 105 floors. I'm like, 105? They said there's 104. There is 104 floors, but you know what the 105th floor is? The 105th floor is an observation deck. So I look up the meaning of the word observation. The definition of the word observation is from the And I'm thinking, wait a minute, from the observation deck, people are going to look all out over New York from one of the highest vantage points you can have. But you know where they're really going to look? They're going to walk over to the edge, and they're going to look down at the footprint of reflecting absence where the two World Trade Centers were, where all that destruction, all that chaos was, where the two black cubes now are of hyperspace, and in there are these waterfalls and the museum and the tridents, and they're going to look at that, and it's the 105th floor. And I went, what the heck does 105 mean? So what do you think I did? I typed in Quran 105, chapter 105. It's a short verse. Quran chapter 105, when you're standing at the observation deck on 105, looking down at the World Trade Center, think of the Quran 105. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, did not He cause their war to end in confusion? Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with the possessors of the elephant? And send down to prey upon them birds in flocks, casting against them stones of baked clay. So he rendered them like straw eaten up. Like, what? Send against them birds and flocks? You mean like planes? Casting out against them stones of big clay? You mean like when the towers blew up and all the hunks and shard of the concrete got blown out all across the people of New York and the powder came down? So he rendered them like straw eaten up. Did you ever see what the World Trade Center looked like after it was demolished and came down? Did he not cause their war to end in confusion? People running around screaming and hollering and crying? Like from the 105th floor of the observation deck of the new building, the Quran says that in the 105th verse? I don't know. Coincidence? Synchronicity? I don't know. It's up to the person to look at it and decide what it means. I'm sorry. Back to your caller, Hillary.
We have a bunch of callers actually, and I don't think we're going to have time to get to them, and I apologize. But thank you for, attempting to. I think this information is extremely important. I think it's very relevant. It's very timely. Looking at the anniversary this weekend. This is a very important show. What Mark has been sharing with us is extremely relevant and very important for people to listen to, share, and re-listen to, because there's so much information in this hour that you've just spent sharing this with us. And I don't think it's any coincidence at all that you heard that voice. I experienced the earthquake with you. You live kind of close to me. You're in Pennsylvania. I'm in New York. But I've had the same thing happen to me. Of course, I work on different levels, and my dreaming has verified a lot of this, and it's just been fascinating to me. I was actually on the site, and I've shared that with my listeners before. I was actually on the site shortly after, hard hat and all, and it was just an incredible experience. I was standing on one of the remnants of the floors with big holes in it, and touching the steel things and watching them dig out people and cars. And it was just an amazing experience. And it was absolutely synchronistic that I ended up where I was. But this has been a very important topic to me, and I've done shows with Judy Wood. I've done shows with people who are speaking out on a lot of different alternative theories about what happened. I support her work greatly, and I just am in awe of the symbolism that's related to this site. April 20th, by the way, was Hitler's birthday. It was also the day that the Deepwater Horizon exploded. We had 11 people die. We have had a lot of things happen since that in that particular part of the world. And, I just don't, it's no incident. Also, a leap year, that day is the 111th day in the Gregorian calendar on leap years. So I think that's really relevant too. There's a lot of things going on here, and people like yourself are bringing this forward and talking about it and making people aware of it. It's incredible. Are we looking at a monument dedicated to uniting everything? We just spent the last 10 years at war with, different countries in the Middle East, making them our great enemy, and now we're honoring them at the site. And some people will have a hard time with that when they listen to some of the things that you've shared. What is the truth? Who knows? I mean, I think we all have to really sit down and know ourselves well enough to know what that means for us and what we believe, and do our own work and watch the synchronistic alignments happen as you start to look into this, because I think that's really key. You have kind of a force helping you look into this. At least that's what I see when when you actually are writing about it and posting about it and looking at the pictures and putting them all together. You need to publish this.
Well,
you just need to publish this. I want to see a book by Mark Gray within 11 days, Mark. You got a lot of work to do, because this is really important. I mean, this is something that, this is a modern day temple. This is something that we're looking at being built right in front of us by people who understand the occult meanings, who understand all the relative information that you just talked about. There's no accident that this is all there. And it should blow everybody's mind listening. It should really make a gigantic statement to the realities of what's going on. We're out of time. Mark, thank you very much for being here. I'm a big fan, so I'm just going to keep watching what you're doing, and I'm going to keep sharing it on, my end. So, keep it up. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Good night, everyone. Till next time, namaste.